everybody, my name is Jenny from Cutie Patootie Crafts, and today I'm excited to share my first project for the Pawsome Stamps design team. For my cards today, I'm going to be using the adorable Coffee Besties stamp set along with the Coffee Drinks stencil. Here's a closer look at all the sweet images and the coffee related sentiments. And here is a closer look at the stencil. So for my cards today, I'm going to go ahead and start by stamping out a couple of these images onto some 80-pound Neenah cardstock using my Misty. And of course, I couldn't resist using the adorable little cat and dog in the mugs along with some coffee beans. After I finish stamping out all my images, I'm just going to go ahead and do some quick coloring with some Copic markers. Next, I'm going to use a white gel pen to just add some dotted highlights across the images. I'm going to go ahead and do some fussy cutting, and I'm going to trim these images out right to the edge. I also used an X-Acto knife to trim out the white space between the handle and the mug. Next up, I used a black memento marker to just color in all the white spaces along the edges of my images. Once my images were finished, I set those aside and started to work on my background, and I brought in the stencil and an A2 size piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and do some inking with some spun sugar, picked raspberry, and wilted violet, and I'm going to start in the uppermost left hand corner and just blend that across the card front. Once I have those colors nice and blended, I'm going to add the stencil on top and then go ahead and blend in the same way through the stencil. Then I'm going to go ahead and create a second background the same way, but this time I'm going to use the colors Squeezed Lemonade, Twisted Citron, and Peacock Feathers. Once I finished my ink blending, I brought the images back in and just played around with the placement. The more I moved my images around the card front, I felt they just needed a little something extra, so I'm going to bring in some black acrylic paint and a spritz of water to do some splatter. And first I just brought in a piece of scrap cardstock to practice. Once I finished with the splatter, I set my card fronts aside to dry and moved on to creating the sentiments. And for those, I'm just going to heat emboss two different sentiments from the stamp set onto some black cardstock with white detail embossing powder. First, I just prepped the cardstock with some anti-static powder, and then I'm going to use some Versamark ink to stamp those onto the cardstock. Next up, I'm going to add the embossing powder and then just clean up any stray bits with a paintbrush. Then I'm going to go ahead and melt those in place using my heat tool. Once the embossing powder is nice and melted, I'm going to bring in a microfiber cloth and wipe away any extra anti-static powder, and then I'm just going to go ahead and trim out those sentiments. I brought everything back together along with the sentiments and started playing around with the layout again. Next up, I brought in a rectangle die to trim down this green panel to leave an 1/8 inch border around the edges. And then I also trimmed down the pink panel by a 1/4 inch on the left-hand side. Next up, I can start gluing stuff down, so I needed to create my card bases. So I just used a piece of 80-pound Nina cardstock for that as well. And to add a little extra interest to the white space left by trimming down the panels, I brought in some thin striped washi, and I'm just going to add that to the right hand side. For my second card, I'm going to do almost the same thing as I did on the other, but instead of going from the top to the bottom of the card, I'm just going to rip off the ends. And now I finally have everything in place, and I can go ahead and glue it all down. Once everything was secured to the card front, I decided to add some extra embellishments, so I brought in this orchid sequin mix. And I'm going to add these pretty pinks and purples across my pink and purple card. And I also brought in the lotus flower sequin mix, and I'm going to add those yellows and greens across my other card. So off camera, I had already placed my sequins, and I'm just going to go ahead and attach those with some liquid glue. And here is a close-up of my finished cards. I really love how these cards came together. I especially like all the different textures, from the inking to the splatter to the bits of washi. And of course, I think the sequins just added a much needed sparkle. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!